Arizona State wide receiver Jordyn Tyson is one of the New Orleans Saints' can't-miss prospects in the 2026 NFL Draft.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the Saints could absolutely hit a home run in the draft by going defense first. We'll take a look at how they could add a potential takeaway machine in day two, and we'll kick everything off with why Jordyn Tyson, Arizona State wide receiver, is one of the three can't-miss prospects for the New Orleans Saints at the top of the 2026 NFL Draft and our midweek mock draft. We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much. Whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being it every day, you're here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. All thanks to you as we bring you your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets used across the app. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started today. Jordyn Tyson, the Arizona State wide receiver, is one of the can't-miss prospects at the top of the 2026 NFL Draft that the New Orleans Saints must strongly be considering, especially if they're drafting within the top 5 or even within the top 3. We're going to run through a 4-round, 5-pick mock draft here for you on today's show. And we're going to be leading off at pick number 3, which is what the Saints currently hold after the New York Giants Monday Night Football loss, an embarrassing one. Did you see Younghoe Koo try to kick a field goal and kick the dirt like 1 foot short of the field? Anyway, when that loss happened, the New York Giants fell to 2-11, which is technically worse than the Saints at 2-10. And so the Giants moved up to the number 2 overall selection, number 3 overall selection for New Orleans, sitting at or is kind of in their hands now at this point. And so for me, Jordyn Tyson is a can't miss guy. 6'2", 200 pounds, big time physical, just I am better than you kind of attitude wide receiver. One of the most fun wideouts to watch in college football. I know he's dealing with the hamstring injury right now, which is a little bit of a concerning factor, right? You know that these types of injuries are always when, not if, in terms of any type of re-injury or anything like that. But as he continues to deal with that, ideally much better by the time that he gets into the 2026 NFL season, and all can be good to go. Now, I know we're all very excited about what we saw from Devaughn Vele over the course of that one game up against the Miami Dolphins last weekend. And maybe you're saying to yourself, well, why go after another big-bodied wide receiver when you already have one that's proven that he can be a part of it? Well, por qué no los dos? Why not two, right? Why not both? And so for the Saints, I understand that they could potentially sit there and say, you know what? Devaughn Vele is the guy across from Chris Olave, but go ahead and get another receiver at this point. We'll go through like an alternative path to still getting this done at the end of the show today. But if you're sitting there at pick number 3 overall and Arvell Reese is off the board, then to me, Jordyn Tyson and then the safety out of Ohio State, Caleb Downs, are the 3 can't-miss prospects in this class, including Ohio State linebacker Arvell Reese. And so with Arvell Reese off the board in this version of the mock draft that I did, it's clear and easy for me that Jordyn Tyson at number 3 makes a ton of sense for New Orleans. He is a dominating presence, a dominating guy. He's somebody that can be a bit of an accuracy eraser or an inaccuracy eraser for your quarterbacks as well. I think that there's value in that while you're still developing a young quarterback in Tyler Shuck. And so to have somebody that can go up there and catch, over 40% of his contested catches in college, that averages over 2 yards per route or 2 yards per route run in college football, bringing some of that process and progress over to your team and production over to your team can be very helpful. And his 1.6% drop rate here in 2025 is outstanding. Right now, he sits with just over 700 yards, 711 receiving yards on 97 targets, 61 catches. Again, a little bit of inaccuracy over with that Arizona State quarterback situation. 8 receiving touchdowns this year, 10 last year. This guy is a producer. This is what he does. He's fantastic. And for me, I get the idea that, Devaughn Vele gave you a really good game that we're all really excited about in terms of finally getting the opportunity to see him. But he can't bank it all on one game, right? Got to see that all the way through. So as of right now, Jordyn Tyson at number 3 would be a fantastic selection, in my view, for the New Orleans Saints in the 2026 NFL Draft. And honestly, if Devaughn Vele continues to ascend and continues to arrive, and then you re-sign Chris Olave, and then you bring in Jordyn Tyson, that's a really good trio of wideouts to have. You know, you don't need to have just 2. You could have a third really good wide receiver as well, and find ways to get the ball to all of these guys and utilize them in a bunch of different ways. You have a guy like Chris Olave who you can move inside and out. You can do the same thing with Devaughn Vele, who can run routes from the boundary as well as on the inside. And then when it comes to Jordyn Tyson, he's somebody that has taken last year in 2024, he took over 160 snaps in the slot. So you could potentially use him there as well as using him outside on the boundary, which is where his focus during his final year here in 2025 in college has been. But it's not the only thing that he's ever done. He has gotten work in the slot. So you'd have 3 versatile pieces, 2 of which very big physical guys that you could work into some contested catch situations. You can work into the middle of the field and then continue to further what it is that you're trying to do with your offense through that system and through that scheme. So that for me is a big one for New Orleans, and Jordyn Tyson would make a ton of sense. Let's go to pick number 2 in our draft here. And for this one, I went to an edge rusher, which I think is the other big need for New Orleans, adding another edge rusher. And so I went with Joshua Josephs, the edge rusher out of Tennessee. He's smaller and is kind of that stand-up pass rusher that fits the Brandon Staley defensive system a little bit more than maybe some of the other edge rushers that we've seen New Orleans work with. His 20.6% pass rush win rate has been outstanding so far this year. He's also fared pretty well against the run with an 8.2% run stop rate. Both of those are in kind of great to elite conversation amongst this draft class. And he plays a lot of his time outside of the tackles. He can put his hand in the dirt, but he can also stand up and rush the passer for you as well. 6'3", 240 pounds, finishing up his senior year over at Tennessee. He's been disruptive. He's found ways to get to the quarterback and have an impact in those situations as well. And he has been somebody that this Tennessee defense has loved being able to watch just put his hand in the dirt, or rather pin his ears back and then go and rush and get after the passer. He's got six tackles for a loss and 4 sacks this year. He's got a total of 9.5 sacks combined over the course of his career. So certainly would like to see that number up a little bit higher, but certainly not somebody to pass on. He's somebody that I think once you get him in as a full-time pass rusher and allow him to be able to go out there and be that kind of guy for you, I think that he can be a very, very impactful player in this New Orleans Saints system. And in handing him over to Brandon Staley, I think would be a very, very good run for him as well, or very good situation rather for him as well. And so you'd be hard pressed to find me complaining about the idea of landing this guy because I do think that he could be a very impactful player. Is he Arvell Reese, where you could also drop him back and have him, rush the passer and things like that? No, drop him back and have him drop back in coverage, as opposed to rush the passer. No, probably not. It's probably not the game that you're expecting from him. But for the Saints, that's something that you can supplement in other ways. Incorporate more Isaiah Stallbird into the defense and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of different ways the Saints could go with that to be able to kind of get that extra coverage player that they might want. But for me, Joshua Josephs and his ability as a pass rusher would be very, very hard to pass up on if I'm the New Orleans Saints, just based on what I know I need if I'm this team. You know what I mean? And so getting another one of those disruptive pass rushers to complement and be opposite Chase Young, I think could go a really, really long way for New Orleans. So that's our first 2 picks in the books. And so now we're going to head over to continue to focus on the defensive side of the football as we look to bring in a ball hawk and a takeaway machine to this defense. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Aura Frames. Aura Frames are awesome. And look, I'm a bad gift giver. I talk about it all the time, but I love giving like digital picture frames for folks. And there is not one better out there than Aura Frames. You can add personalized messages on the inside of the frame so that the gift feels very personal once it's open. You can even preload photos. 30-second videos with the Aura app as well. And any videos that you preload, you can actually preload before the gift arrives. That way the memories are already built in. And right now, for a limited time, you can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off of Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames. It's rated #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames do sell out fast, so make sure you order yours today to get it in time for the holidays and support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. All right, family. I think one of the other big needs for New Orleans outside of wide receiver, outside of pass rusher, is a player that can be a ball hawk or a big time takeaway artist on the defensive side of the football. Just somebody that can force some turnovers. I think Quincy Riley is starting to develop into that. You see him consistently around the football. Got what Kellen Moore called as close to an interception as you can get without an interception in the game up against the Miami Dolphins, which to me absolutely was an interception, but that's okay. It's all right. It's whatever it is. But I do think that getting another one of those players that can get the ball back to your offense would be big. That's kind of what the Saints wanted in Julian Blackmon at the safety position next to Justin Reed. Julian Blackmon had a season-ending injury after the first week. We'll see if he's back with New Orleans next season. We know Brandon Staley is a big-time fan of his and has always wanted to work with him. But the Saints will also need to be looking towards the future as well. And so one of the many safeties that I like in this class, I like Arizona's Genesis Smith. I like the McNeil kid from Toledo. There's a couple of Alabama SEC guys that I like as well. But one of my favorites is Oregon Ducks safety Dillon Thieneman. And I'm not alone in this. I want to toss this over now to our good friend Spencer McLaughlin from over at Locked On Ducks, who highlighted Thieneman because of a big play that he made just a weekend ago. And it gives you an idea of exactly what it is that he could bring to a New Orleans Saints defense.
Dillon Thieneman keeps playing better and better. He has been everything that we hoped he would be when he came over from Purdue in the offseason. He has been so steady, so consistent, game-clinching interception there at the end. And I want to shout out Jaden Kennedy as well. But Dillon Thieneman's ability to play at all three levels, the only thing we haven't seen him do this year is sack the quarterback and be that kind of blitzer. Guess what? Don't need him to be. Not what I was looking for in the offseason when he came over. I thought, man, be nice to have a rangy safety on the back end. He's that guy. And he does everything. And the way they're using him in that Caleb Downs role.
So interesting to hear that comparison as a part of the evaluation, because obviously Caleb Downs is one of the three guys that I named at the early part of the show about one of the three can't miss prospects in this year's draft. And so utilizing him in a similar role, a guy that can drop back, but that can come down and play in the box, all those other things. I do think, though, that Caleb Downs would be a better pass rusher. But I kind of look at it the same way for the Saints as what Spencer was just saying for Oregon, is that you don't necessarily need that from him. You have the potential return of Alante Taylor and a guy that can rush the passer from the inside. You have a guy like Jonas Sanker who can rush from the inside as well. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, what do you do with Jonas Sanker? Like if you go and you spend a third-round pick on another safety for a second year in a row, well, first of all, your hope is that Sanker and Thieneman would then be your kind of 1-2 punch, your two safety tandem in the future. But at the same time, you can roll with Justin Reed and Thieneman in the deep and then move Jonas Sanker into the slot if Alante Taylor signs elsewhere. There's enough versatility between guys like Quincy Riley as well as Jonas Sanker that you can take advantage of that and get all three of these guys out on the field as well. And so I just think that like for a guy 6 foot, 200 pounds, 8 interceptions over the course of his career, 2 this year, 6 just a couple years ago. This is a guy that could come in and have a pretty good impact, rangy, super good at reading and understanding where the offense might be going, understands play flow well, just kind of does all of those things. I think that he could be a really, really good addition for New Orleans to that defense and ideally give them somebody that can get the ball back into the hands of, operating under the assumption that Tyler Shuck will be the quarterback in 2026 here, of course. And so in that case, getting the ball back to Tyler Shuck in 2026. All right, let's take a look at the next picks here in round 4. I went with 2 selections here. This one was running back Kaytron Allen out of Penn State, and then guard DJ Campbell out of Texas. Now, the thing about this draft class is that there's not a lot of guards that I would run to the podium for early on in the draft. So this middle round area is kind of where you might look at the Saints to build up their offensive line, or to at least get their best kind of bang for their buck, if you will, when it comes to building up the offensive line. So I do think that that is a route that they could go. Now, Nick Underhill and I over at the NOF pod were talking on Tuesday about how the Saints could potentially even take a tackle and then move Taliesin Fuanga to the inside to improve that interior. In any case, the interior needs a lot of help and needs a lot of attention for the Saints. And a guy like DJ Campbell could do that. I mean, he's a big, big dude that would be able to help to plug up the middle for you and be a guy that can, lead the way in the run game a bit. He is a good mover as well, but his size, I think, is really, really desirable in a heavy run system, the one that we expected Kellen Moore to bring this year, that maybe he's looking to install next year, 6'3", 321 pounds. That's a guy that can open up some lanes for you in the middle. He's aggressive. He moves quickly, has only allowed 1 sack so far this season in a Texas season that hasn't gone extremely well. He's been one of those sort of developmental bright spots. You've seen him get better every year. Gave up 6 sacks back in 2023, but then only 3 in 24, 1 in 2025. So he's gotten better and better and better. Has operated well in the zone game, in the gap game, all of that. And he's operated well in true pass sets as well. That's those true pass sets where you don't run a play action or move the pocket or anything like that. You're just dropping back and you're passing. All of his experience over the course of the past 3 years has been at right guard. So are you drafting him to slot in place of Cesar Ruiz or to compete with Cesar Ruiz? Maybe you're drafting him to plug in at left guard and see, maybe you might also add a tackle and then move somebody over like a Taliesin Fuanga. But outside of all this, I think the most important thing for the Saints to do is address the offensive line in free agency and then treat offensive line additions in the draft this upcoming year as potential development pieces that can then get plugged in at a later time or give you some more valuable young depth. And so I would like to see the Saints be very active on the offensive line in free agency and then kind of supplement a little bit in the draft. Now, when it comes to Kaytron Allen, the running back out of Penn State, this is a guy that I have liked since last year. I was hoping that him and Nicholas Singleton, both of those Penn State running backs, were going to end up coming out last year amongst that really good running back class. The Saints got Devin Neal out of that really good running back class this year. Go and get you a guy in the early day 3 at the latest, because of what this running back class looks like. This running back class is really, really heavily weighted at the top, and then it quickly falls off as you get deeper into day 3, maybe even at the end of day 2. So you might even need to go a little bit earlier for a guy like Kaytron Allen. But in any case, getting another running back and continuing to build this run game by building up with the offensive line, but adding to the running back position, I think is a must for New Orleans. 1,303 rushing yards so far this year. Already has 15 touchdowns on the season as well. He's got 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons, operating as a guy in partnership with another running back. Like he is in a like a tandem backfield and everything, and he's still producing like that. And he's kind of taken the step ahead of Nicholas Singleton a little bit over the course of this year. Just is kind of the smaller of the two, but still enough behind him as well. At 5'11", 219 pounds, only 23 years old by the time that the season begins. This is a guy that you can run out with routes. This is a guy that can pick up yards for you after contact, 24th in the nation in that category. He can run in between the tackles. He can run outside the tackles, and you can utilize him a bunch of different ways. And he's got 17 carries of 15 plus yards, something that the Saints have not been able to adequately get out of their run game for what feels like the past couple of years, really, but certainly this year. And so adding a guy like Kaytron Allen, I think, could go a long way for New Orleans. So we'll recap the draft here in just a sec, and then we'll go over a couple of alternative options as we do that. So just in case you don't get the wide receiver early, what's another route that you can go? We'll break all that down coming up next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL Sundays move fast. Sometimes you miss kickoff. Sometimes you don't get your parlays in before the game gets started, all that. But thanks to our friends over at FanDuel and their live betting experience, you never have to miss out on the action. They make it so that you're not just watching the game, but you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds on each drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Everything from who's going to get the next catch, who scores the next touchdown, drive results, totals, and more all shift throughout the game and update instantly so that you can stay in on the action. If you're looking ahead to the NFL draft, good news for Saints fans. Arvell Reese, the Ohio State linebacker, just the 5th best odds to be the number 1 overall selection. So if the Saints fall behind number 1, good opportunity to still add some impact players. So if you want to get started and be in the middle of the action with FanDuel, head over to FanDuel.com to get started today, where you can get in on all of that live betting. FanDuel, the games moves fast, and so can you. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints' first 3 selections in the 2026 NFL draft class, to me, will make or break the draft class. That's what happens when you draft early, right? When you draft a number 3 overall, and a number 3 in the 2nd round, and a number 3 in the 3rd round, those 3 rounds become the most important. Day 1, day 2. And then everything you do in day 3 after that, you can add your special teams players, you can go and add your role players, your rotational players, your depth pieces, all that kind of stuff. You can do all that in day 3. But what you do in rounds 1, 2, and 3, to me, frame the entirety of that draft class when you're drafting that early. And we're presuming in this situation that the Saints are drafting in top 3, because that's the hypothetical that we're working with in terms of this year's, or this, where they are currently positioned in the draft. So let's recap the draft that we just did, and then we'll discuss some of the alternatives, because if you're not trying to screw this up, you're not going to screw this up. And that's good news for New Orleans. So let's dive into this one. So just to recap our last draft that we just did, wide receiver Jordyn Tyson out of Arizona State was our number 3 overall selection. At number 35, which is the 3rd selection in the 2nd round, Joshua Josephs, the edge rusher out of Tennessee. Then we went with safety out of Oregon, Dillon Thieneman at round 3, pick 67. We're going to look at alternatives for all 3 of those as we wrap up the show. But just as a reminder, at round 4, we took Kaytron Allen at 128, the running back out of Penn State, and DJ Campbell, the guard out of Texas, at 138. So we're going to leave the round 4 conversation here. We're going to focus now on rounds 1, 2, and 3, and look at the alternatives there. So in round 1, going with Jordyn Tyson, super simple. 3 easy alternative candidates. 2 of the can't miss guys that I mentioned. Ohio State linebacker Arvell Reese, who's more than just a middle of the field off-ball linebacker. He's a pass rusher. He can cover. He defends the run well. Just kind of does everything. So he'd be a good fit for this Brandon Staley defense as a chess piece. That's a part of that. You can go with safety Caleb Downs, who can cover, who can tackle, come down to the box, who can rush the passer. He's just very disruptive. Could be a little bit of a Derwin James-like safety for Brandon Staley. And for that reason, I'll tell you this right now, I don't care that he's a safety, and I don't care that we're talking about him at number 3 overall. I couldn't care less this year about like the position next to the player's name. If you think that player can have an impact for you, invest in that player. It does not matter. Positional value out the window for this draft when you're drafting that high. Just go and grab the player that you think is the can't miss prospect. And so for me, Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, 2 of the best prospects in this class. Doesn't matter that one of those is a safety. Now, understand what I'm saying. That doesn't mean, oh, well, what if they draft a kicker, Ross? Obviously a problem, because the kicker is not an impact player and he's not a can't miss prospect in the draft, right? So what I'm saying is best player available, not necessarily best player available at a particular position, right? So go with the best player that's available regardless of position. The other guy that's in there too is University of Miami edge rusher Rueben Bain, right? 6'3", 275 pounds, an interesting build of player. There's question marks about whether or not he's going to translate to the NFL, all that. Put him in the right system and he'll translate 10 times out of 10. That's all that matters. Is this the right system for him? That would be the scouting department and Brandon Staley having to make that decision for sure. But any of those 3 alternatives to Jordyn Tyson, and heck, even a Carnell Tate, another Ohio State product, you could really do just all Ohio State players in the first round, and any of them, you're fine in that situation. And so for New Orleans, there would be all of those routes and alternatives at round 1. In round 2, I think a lot of the best alternatives in that conversation for me revolve around the wide receiver position. If Casey Concepcion, the 5'9", shifty, yards after catch threat, game-breaking wide receiver falls out of the first round, great selection there, although it feels like he's just going to be a Kansas City Chief. But that's how it's all said and done, because those are the kinds of guys that team drafts. But if he falls out of the first round, 2nd round, scoop him up. Chris Bell, the wide receiver out of Louisville, who is a big-bodied guy, but moves extremely well, can pick up some yards after catch for you there as well. Reunite him with Tyler Shuck, who we're assuming, by the way, in this exercise is the quarterback for 2026. That's why we skipped quarterback in the first round, of course. And so you could end up landing him, pair him back up with Tyler Shuck, let them go to work. Great. Elijah Surratt, one of my favorite wide receivers in this draft class out of Indiana. Same thing, right? Reminds me of Jordyn Tyson. You get Jordyn Tyson, you can get Jordyn Tyson at home. They're both really, really good. And so it doesn't matter. So Elijah Surratt would be a really good one as well. You don't have to stop there. There's good defensive tackles in that range. There's good edge rushers in that range as well. But assuming that we're operating these alternatives connected, we just went defense. And so I might go offense. But again, best player available at the position and then keep moving. At round 3, lots of different routes for you to go here if you want an alternative. I think some of the better alternatives are on the defensive line. Guys like Dante Corleone out of Cincinnati and stuff like that. Like, I think you can find that. But you can also find a guy like Nicholas Singleton if you want to go for him a little bit early. Another wide receiver like Skylar Bell, who's another good catch and run receiver with UConn. So there are those players that you can also find in round 3 that can make it all worth it for you, based upon how you continue to build up this roster. These are guys that can go out there and play for you week 1. And so finding those options in rounds 1, 2, and 3 to me is the single most important thing that the Saints must do in the 2026 NFL draft class. And of course, there's always a trade down option, but we know the Saints haven't done that since 2007. So we're not going to hold our breath necessarily on that one. All right, y'all, a little bit of lanyard for you here as we wrap up. Just some transaction news that I want to make sure that you know about. The Saints with an interesting signing. Cornerback Beanie Bishop added to the practice squad, and they waived running back Ian Wheeler in order to make room for Bishop. Bishop is an interesting player. 5'9", about 180 pounds, 185, 190 pounds, somewhere in that range. Kind of your usual slot receiver build, right? That you see across the NFL. Kind of similar build to Asante Samuel Jr., who we thought that the Saints might potentially be in on because of the Brandon Staley connection. Well, Beanie Bishop, the Saints are in on because of the Grady Brown selection, or the Grady Brown connection, rather, who ended up becoming the Saints cornerback coach this offseason, was with the Steelers last year. Asante Samuel Jr. ends up with the Steelers. Beanie Bishop becomes available. The Saints sign Beanie Bishop. See how the world turns. 4 interceptions last year as a rookie, undrafted free agent out of West Virginia. He was a player that I really liked in the draft class. I had him as like kind of one of those late round sleepers that I liked, but ends up becoming available. The Saints scoop him up, played over 400 snaps in the slot last year. We were just talking about how if the Saints don't have Alontae Taylor back next season, that they could be in the market for another slot corner, or could move a player from safety to corner, or Beanie Bishop could become that guy if necessary. So interesting stuff. If nothing else, even if you are able to be fortunate enough to keep Alontae Taylor here in New Orleans, then you still want a really good backup in the slot, and a guy like Beanie Bishop who could get like a reserve future deal going into next year could be a great option there. And then curiously, the Saints also waived wide receiver Kevin Austin Jr. as well as tackle Barry Wesley from the active roster. Now you might be thinking, well, didn't they just activate? Like, they just used a return slot on Barry Wesley coming back for injured reserve. Why, just waive him and move on? Well, it kind of works out. Saints only have 5 games left in the season. If anybody goes on injured reserve after next week, their season is done anyway. And so finding a way maybe to get him up there. But I'm wondering, like, we've heard a lot about whether or not Trey Palmer is going to be coming back to this team or not. And, if he does, it'd be late in the season. Well, we're late in the season now, and Kevin Austin Jr. just got waived on a team that that doesn't have a lot of wide receivers. Now, it could be that Dante Pettis ends up moving up to the active roster, and then Kevin Austin Jr. moves to the practice squad. That could happen because Dante Pettis' 3 elevations are now up. That would make sense. But I'm always going to be on my Trey Palmer conspiracy watch. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with him. And then Barry Wesley could potentially end up back at the practice squad or on the practice squad as well. The Ian Wheeler waive could mean one of 2 things. Could mean that they're feeling good about where Alvin Kamara is trending. We'll learn more about that later on today, Thursday and Friday in practice. Or it could simply mean that they like the 3 guys that they have on the roster now, and carrying 3 active players on the roster at the positions better than carrying 2, which is what the Saints were doing for a little while. And notice Evan Hull left up just past Audric Estime right away and got carries up against the Miami Dolphins. So we'll see kind of how the running back position plays out, but certainly some transactions now and things that we'll continue to watch over the course of the week. And don't miss tomorrow's episode. We'll be taking a look at the Saints and Bucks matchup. James Yarko, Locked On Bucks, will be here for Crossover Thursday. Don't forget to check us out on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else are on your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes. Make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, let me know how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.